Hey guys, it's Brandon here. I am back here in the same spot I was last week, wearing the exact same clothes. That's amazing. Yes, you probably guessed it. I filmed this intro the same time that I filmed the intro for last week. But we are talking about a whole new topic this week. This week it's going to be our third critique session. This one is really fun. We're talking about story and pose and a little bit about structure and detail. So a lot of little things we're going to dip into. And we are still continuing the giveaways that we've been doing kind of as a lead up to Green Monk Blood of the Martyrs. Still horrible glitter on this book. And yes, this is the exact same book that I showed you last week, but you can win a completely new Green Monk mini comic by leaving a comment in the comment section. Again, the same rules as always. You have to have commented previously and it has to be an interesting comment. So check that out. I'm going to send out another book. And don't forget, Green Monk Blood of the Martyrs out this September 26th. If you'd like to pre-order it, you can do it through your local comic book shop. Still some time to do that. And through Amazon. And I will include a link to the Amazon pre-order page. Okay, so without further ado, let's do critique number 3. Okay, let's get started with our latest critique. So today I'm going to be looking at a piece sent in to me by Daryl Anderson. And what I really like about this piece is I like that it's about interaction, but there's also like a setting and there's the suggestion of a story, which I really like. So I kind of want to build off of this. And I will say too, there's some nice things going on as far as with detail, with form, that could be developed further. So I kind of want to take this and develop it a little bit and add a little bit more as far as his story. So I'm just going to start sketching while I kind of talk about this. I'm just going to add a white layer over the top here so we can kind of see Daryl's original work. So one thing I'm going to do here, I want to add a depth in more ways. I want a little bit more depth in perspective. We're also going to add some depth into storytelling. So right now with this current layout, we've got a character that's kind of just sitting on a single plane here, and another character right here. These characters could all exist. This could basically be a stage. They could be standing on a thin stage, and this background could be like a backdrop. Even though we got some perspective going on in the backdrop, there's not a lot of depth to this shot. It feels pretty flat. So I want to add a little bit more depth to the poses here. And at the same time, I want to add a little bit more depth just to the storytelling. Like I said, I like that there's some storytelling going on here, and I just want the suggestion of a little bit more. Like right now, we know that one character is flipping off another character, and I want to have get a sense in this image that we feel like we're in the middle of something. We want to have a sense that something came before this, and that something is coming after this. And that's kind of really the secret to storytelling. Even if you have a single image, even if you aren't working in a comic, there's a lot of things you can do within a single image to suggest continuity, to suggest that you're in the middle of a story being told. And so I think one of the really important ways to do this, and I'm just going to start drawing while I talk, is to kind of think up some business. Think about what our characters are doing. Even if this isn't actually part of a story, that's something you can still invent. Maybe this is part of a story, but I'm gonna kind of invent some business. I'm gonna talk about some potential business that these characters could be doing as well. So where could this event be happening that one character is flipping the bird, and why might this be happening? So the one I'm kind of going with is I'm gonna assume it's kind of a setting where they're taking a break. Some sort of like futuristic police officer. I'm going to kind of assume she's like taking a break. This could be at her apartment. She's got this robotic partner. She's at her apartment. could be that she's outside her office. That isn't as important, but the idea is she's kind of taking a break. And she's in the middle of some sort of frustrating experience, some frustrating case. And she has this robot companion that is just oblivious to kind of the sensitive nature of whatever she's going through. You know, it's kind of this C-3PO type character. And she's complaining about her, whatever, boss busting her balls. And he just says something robotic and insensitive, and so she flips him off. That's kind of one. That's kind of going to be the one that I'm going with right now. And the other thing is, you'll notice one thing I'm doing here is I'm kind of creating some perspective. So this really, what I'm doing here, this is really like a 2-point perspective, which is really fantastic. I think a 2-point perspective is a great way to set up a scene. So I'm just going to kind of draw in just a rough perspective grid here. There's so much you can do with this. This is probably one of the most common perspective grids I use when I'm laying out. When I'm laying out a scene. So from this perspective grid, we can assume that actually like our vanishing points can be somewhere up here, although I probably am drawing a little bit too close here. But a 2-point perspective is a really great way to easily set up a scene and give yourself a lot of depth. If you want to see a really easy way to set up, so excuse me here, we got leaf blower coming in front of the window. If you want to see a really easy way to set up a 2-point perspective scene, you can check out, I have a video called Perspective Without Vanishing Points. So check that out, and then I'll kind of show you how you can do this. And there's kind of a technical system to doing it, but once you get more used to it, more comfortable with it, you can start kind of doing it more intuitively. So anyway, this is the scene I'm kind of thinking of. Another alternative scene. I'm just gonna sketch out another alternative scene, but we'll keep kind of the 2-point perspective. The other thing I could kind of imagine is just that they're going on a walk. You know, her boss just told her, "Hey, I want you to go check out this lead." She's grumbling about it. It's basically the same type of relationship. She's got her robotic character is like saying, "Ah, yes, but protocol is for us to do this, and you shouldn't be doing that." And she's like flipping the bird to her robot friend. So walking down the street in this scene. So we're giving them some sort of business. And this is kind of an idea that comes from acting. You know, actors will normally, when they're saying lines, they don't just say lines. So, okay, she's on a busy street, so let's just imagine there's a bunch of people walking behind her. Maybe there's people walking in front of her. But that's the setting. We have a specific setting, they're doing something. But again, getting back to acting, the idea is that when you're acting, you aren't just speaking lines, but you're doing some sort of business. It feels more realistic, but also can motivate how you say things. It can kind of tell some additional story as well. So this is the one where they're kind of walking down the street. She flips the bird on this robot. But let's go with this other one. This is the other concept where she's taking a break. So either she's at home. I got a dog in the office with me here too. So she's at home, or she's taking a break, taking a future smoke. Maybe she's got a cigarette here, flipping the bird. All right. So immediately with this, you get a sense of story. The viewer can really fill in the blanks. They don't need to know all the details, but just suggesting a little bit of what's going on can make things more interesting. So that's kind of the pose. We got the pose, we got the scene laid out. It gives us a sense of some sort of story going on. And I want to get a little bit into her expression. We've got an unhappy dog here. I'm not sure Quiet Stock, so unhappy. Okay, so I want to get into her expression and kind of think about some options with her expression that could suggest different things. And that's one thing. We've got this expression here, and it could be a little bit more specific. I want to have a little more sense about what's going on here, what's going through her mind. So let's try out some different options for expression. Figure out what works best. Make sure I'm kind of getting her hair somewhat right. She's got like a little piercing on her temple, some type. All right, so I'm going to try, first thing I'm going to try is I'm going to do kind of an expression that's just like F off. You know, she's just like, just doesn't want to deal. That's not quite right. It's a little too sad. So right here, she's just kind of fuming in this version. All right, so that's one option we could take on expression. Makes it look like she's smiling a little bit. So right here, she's just like glowering. So that's kind of the story. She's just had enough. She has to deal with her boss. She has to deal with this case that isn't working out. And then this robot has to come and start just jabbering, and so she flips the bird. So that's kind of the story we're trying to communicate here. We get that from the pose. We get that kind of from the setting, that she's kind of taking a smoke, whatever. That's kind of one we could take. I want to do another version of this, though, where we try to kind of riff off her expression here, where it's more like, yeah, she's got it bad, but at least she can like give this robot a hard time, and so she knows she's kind of like, it's a little more playful. She doesn't care quite so much about she's not really mad. She's not trying to hurt the feelings of her droid friend. But she's just trying to get her eyes out of him for whatever reason. Which I think might be a little more interesting. Kind of a little bit more interesting of a reaction. But one thing that you'll kind of notice when you're doing things like this is it does kind of becomes a decision, especially if you're doing comics, where there's a lot of writing that can happen just in the expressions you give your characters. Particularly if you are not doing the work of another writer, you can tell two totally different stories just based on the expression you give a character. All right, so she's mostly just playing with her friend with this expression. She knows she's going to get a rise out of RoboPal. It's going to get some sort of reaction. She feels empowered by doing that. That makes it easier to kind of deal with the shit she has to go through at her job. So we'll go with that expression. So let's compare those two. There's kind of more the glowering expression, like leave me alone, and there's more playful expression. So this is just how she copes. She's got it. She knows she's got a tough job, but she can always get her eyes out of her friend, and that makes her feel a little bit better. Okay, so now that we've got kind of that layout figured out, the other thing I want to work on, again, to help us give a little bit more depth to this character, is I want to kind of work on these surface details that we have on her outfit. So to do that, I want to make sure I'm getting good reference of the outfit. I'm gonna expand the canvas here. Let's see. Duplicate this. All right, so now I just have some reference for her, her costume, her outfit, whatever it is. All right, so the other thing I want to do here is I kind of want to work on structure here a little bit, making this a little bit more structurally sound. Proportions are just a little bit odd, but then there's also these details, and I want to make the details kind of tie together a little bit better. There's some places where the details are working really well. I think the best places where the details are working are these shoulder areas, the shoulder girdles, in the hand, where you're using the details to show form, and you're being very, very specific about how things join together. I want to do that with more of the other things. I want to kind of tie things together. You've got the gun here. The gun almost looks like it's kind of floating. Same with this case here. So I want to kind of work on these other details to make them feel a little bit tighter, feel them a little bit more joined to the rest of the outfit. Same thing with this kind of metal piece here. I'm not sure really about the form is a little bit ambiguous, and that could be a little bit clearer. So I'm going to try to see if I can work on some of those issues as well, and that should give us a little bit more depth to this scene as well. So I'm going to start with this kind of collar around her neck, and I'm just thinking about the shape of it. And I'm trying to think about the shape of it as simply as possible, thinking about it as just this it's kind of this taco shape, right? So I'm going to think about it that way, but it's kind of angling at us now, kind of looking up at us, so I'm going to get it a little bit thinner. Just going to make it as simple as possible. Try to draw it as simply as possible. Get her neck in here. All right, so she's wearing some type of armor, so we're going to give that some shape. And then we've got kind of where these two areas join here. I want to kind of call out the edges of those things a little bit more to show that it's two separate pieces that are joined together. We'll see how well that I can do that. Again, we're kind of at an angle here, so maybe we're not even going to see that well. So maybe I'm not going to worry about that too much. Going to do the shoulder again. I think this shoulder is probably the strongest, one of the strongest parts of this. Has just a good sense of form here. All right, then we've got some of the cloth in between here, and then we've got this gauntlet, whatever you're gonna call this thing, around her arm. This arm around her arm. So one thing I've talked about before is really using the opportunity when you have costuming pieces. To use those as opportunities to show form. And again, this is one of the downsides of this pose, is because all this pose is happening in the X and the Y axis. You know, it's all either going up and down or left and right. I want to see more happening in this pose coming towards us or going away from us. If you guys can't tell what I'm drawing arrows in 3 dimensions coming towards us or away from us. We want some more Z in this pose. Having these details on the costume really helps to show the Z, show which direction the pose is pointing. So I can even take this pose as it is, and if I were just go in and exaggerate some of the curves on her armor, or just to say like, okay, instead of this arm just going straight up and down, how about if I just have her hand pointing out this way a little bit more? Just a little bit forward and getting a little more Z into the pose. So I'm going to try to do that here. It's also kind of one of the benefits of doing this 2-point perspective. You get kind of some of that, more of that Z going on. And I'm not going to worry too much about the folds for costume underneath, but I am going to simplify it. So look at all the folds we have going on here. A lot of folds going on here. Let's keep it as simple as possible. You're mainly going to have one big fold at the kind kind of crook of the elbow. Let's just keep it with that one fold. And this is kind of just a secondary bunching of fabric below it and above it. That's really all we need to communicate that fold. Here, I'm going to do a fold that just kind of is pretty standard. When someone raises their arm like this, you're usually going to get a fold right there. And again, you kind of have some bunching above it, maybe a little bit right there as well. I don't know if this armor's actually working exactly. Okay, that looks better. Because that shoulder pad's going to be kind of pointing away in this direction. Okay. So that's her costume. Okay, we have this object right here. That's like where she keeps her, that's her notebook or something. And I'm going to indicate that. We're just going to see the top of that over here, pointing up. But I want to add some sort of details to show how that's connecting. And we're going to maybe see the handle of her gun here. All right, we know it's in a holster. I want to do something just to ground these things more. So I want to come back over here and just, I don't have a great opportunity, I don't really have a fantastic opportunity to show kind of the principle I wanted to show here with grounding these. And of course we can add these details. These stripes are really fantastic too because they show the form. So any of those opportunities you have to show form I think are great. And you have a lot of the distressing here as well. You could add that onto this stuff too. Okay, I don't have as much of an opportunity as I wanted to show this with my sketch because of the angle. But let's talk about just how we can make this gun feel a little bit more kind of attached. So I'm going to kind of rearrange some of the items here. Like maybe this pack right here, I may set it up here a little bit further. It's just going to help with her silhouette. We're going to kind of, all of these details, see all these details up here? They're all going to be kind of bunched up at the top. Although I think where her gun is might be okay. Got that light there. So maybe what I'm going to show is like, let me show some sort of attachment point for the holster onto her armor. And then we want to show how the armor kind of interfaces with that. So maybe I'm going to show coming off of that attachment point, just a little break in her armor. Maybe that's happening on this side as well. We can show that there's a potential attachment point for some other piece of hardware over there. I just need something to connect it to her. And of course, when you get into shading, you can do a much stronger cast shadow with this as well. A lot of the shading here is really soft, and you can do much more stronger cast shadow. See this edge here? This edge on her neck shadow could be harder. You could do this underneath the gun as well, and that will really make that feel like it's connected to her more. Maybe a detail line coming off this way as well. Again, and you could have some cast shadow here as well. So yeah, think about some details that you can add underneath that kind of show how that's going to attach. And try to make these other details throughout here as complex as you have with this shoulder pad. Make some interesting shapes. Show some of that distressing you're doing. And then even on this belt, you could vary the shapes a little bit, like make this buckle more prominent. Because right now I have this shape, all these shapes on the belt are about the same size. You can make this belt like more prominent, and then these, I would bring these kind of strap segments closer together. So there's just more of a contrast. You have this very large shape in the middle, and then you have these thinner shapes around the edge. And even where the buckle divides, it's kind of going right down the middle of it. You may want to try like bringing that to the side, so there's a little less symmetry going on there. And then think about this area of her pelvis and the costume. Like this whole area, these pieces of armor are not as well thought out, and that's pretty clear. You know, if she's wearing some sort of like, think about what type of material she's wearing and how that's going to fit on her. Were I to do this, I would give her some sort of jeans, or like some sort of material that feels like jeans as well. Like think about stitching. Like if you have material, how thick is the material going to be, and how is it going to be stitched, and where's the stitching going to be? Like that's super important. Like if it's jeans, there's almost always going to be some sort of fly. Or if it's jeans or something that's tailored like jeans, it could be a different material but tailored like jeans. You'll have a fly, you'll have the pockets, You know, and that'll immediately give you some more interest. And with jeans, you have very, very strong folds around the pelvis area. So that's one way you could detail that a little bit better. You know, if you want to do more of a fantasy type cloth, you can do that as well. You just need to be specific about like the stitching. You can even add in certain details, however you want to add in the details. I mean, it could be something like this. I mean, I don't know, some sort of futuristic fly going on here. Yeah, you can kind of think of that stitching. Maybe what you're going to do is it's still going to be fairly minimalistic, but you can have some sort of detailing running up the side like here. Like you already have these orange bands here. Maybe do something similar on the legs here as well. Just kind of increase these creases going across here a little bit. And of course you could add some more. This could be all armored as well. This could be some sort of like armored cod piece here if you wanted to. But then on these armored pieces here as well, take a little more thought and time about how you're gonna form those. All right, so let me go over and kind of finish how I'm gonna my kind of take on this. I'm gonna give her, let's give her some business. And so, you know, I don't know the context of this piece, and it's not really important that I know the context of it. I'm sure Daryl probably maybe has a story written out about this, and for these purposes, it's not really important that I know the details of that story. Give her some sort of electronic thing going on there. Her fingers are kind of huge there too. I might make those smaller. You got this railing. Again, you can give more depth to the railing by making it, using that 2-point perspective. Kind of finish out what the rest of her pose is going to look like in the back here. Even if I don't see it, this is good to figure out. Should probably stand like this. Maybe she'll have a knee forward, another back like that, kind of up against this railing. You know, and some of that will poke out underneath. You know, and even with the robot, we can do a little bit with the robot just to give it a sense of depth. We don't really need to change it, even its positioning that much. All I'm going to do is I want to create those, suggest those ellipses on the top and the bottom of the robot. So I'm going to change its shape just a little bit, just to make it like much more clearly cylindrical. So we have a sense of it at the top and a bottom there. You know, good details though on the robot. So now we have a sense we're kind of looking down on the robot a little bit. And of course, then we've got the arms for the robot. All right, so anyway, I think that's pretty good. So that kind of concludes, I think, the feedback I would give on this piece. So yeah, I really like that there's some storytelling going on here. I like that there's kind of looking at doing some detailing, and some of the detailing, especially we've got on the shoulder pads, I think is really headed in the right direction. You know, things can be more complex in some places. I think these other armor pieces could be more complex and more simple in others, like the folds. These folds could be simplified quite a bit, and kind of trying to show how these pieces might attach better to her armor. The other thing again we're trying to do is we're trying to give a little more depth to storytelling, which we're going to do with pose, setting, business, expression. So we have a sense that we're in the middle of the story, and that we can kind of guess where they came from. We can kind of guess where they're going. It's a little less ambiguous. And of course, adding some simple depth to this setup with the 2-point perspective. And all the city building that's being done in the background, that can all be done with this 2-point perspective. You know, we can go back here and add some I'm gonna pretend that she's like, okay, this is the wall of her apartment building, and maybe this is the door she came out of. We just kind of follow that perspective, and this way I don't have to draw as much city. Like, I can just add a little bit of city back here, and that's gonna kind of communicate what we need to, that, oh, she's in a city. We don't have to do a ton of detail. So those are my thoughts. I would be very interested in any comments, any other thoughts on what we could do with this drawing. Of course, if you would like me to look at your work and you would like to have some feedback, a critique session done on this channel, you can send your work to feedback@brandondayton.com. So let me know what you think. Tell me what you think in the comments. If you like this video, please like it, please subscribe, and we'll talk to you next time.